was a cold, crisp Sunday morning when I woke up early, eager to head out to my parents' farm. I lived in the suburbs, but their farm was only a short drive away, and I cherished every visit. The farm was where my faithful dog, Molly, lived. She was a mixed breed with soft brown fur and a wagging tail that never stopped when I was around. My dad and I drove out to the farm, chatting about nothing and everything, the way we always did on these visits. As soon as we arrived, I rushed out of the car and greeted Molly with a big hug. My parents always grumbled about how I'd end up smelling like her all day, but I didn't care. I fastened her leash and asked my dad if I could take her for a walk. He assumed we'd just go down the road and back, but I had different plans. I loved taking Molly into the nearby forest. The forest was my favorite place. Its tall trees, the songs of birds, and the fresh, earthy smell always made me feel at peace. Once we reached the edge of the forest, I unhooked Molly's leash, letting her wander freely. She darted off, her tail wagging as she sniffed and explored. I often spent my time in the forest carving my initials into the trees or hunting for interesting finds. On this particular day, I was using a wooden leg I'd found, probably from an old piece of furniture, as a makeshift bat to hit rocks. Suddenly, Molly's barking pierced the quiet. It was louder and more urgent than usual. I stopped what I was doing and grabbed the wooden leg like a club, though I knew it wasn't really a weapon. I thought it might be a fox or another animal causing her distress. I called out to her, but her barking continued. This was unusual. She always came when I called her. I followed her barking deeper into the forest and came upon a sight that made my heart race. There was a man, probably in his late 50s, crouched by a freshly dug hole in the ground. His presence was unexpected, and his behavior was unsettling. He seemed completely absorbed in his task, ignoring Molly's frantic barking. "Sir, are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, despite the growing knot of fear in my stomach. The man looked up, his face shadowed and inscrutable. "Come here, boy," he said, his voice gruff. "Look what I found." I was terrified. If I didn't approach him, I feared he might start chasing me, so I edged closer, keeping a wary distance. All I could see was an empty hole. The man returned to digging with an old spade. I used this moment to quietly call Molly to me and started to walk away slowly, hoping not to attract his attention. But curiosity got the better of me. I glanced back one last time and saw the man's head buried in the hole. My pulse quickened. Then he stood up, and my blood ran cold. He was holding a bone in his hand, no, in his mouth. It was unclear whether it was from an animal or something more sinister. I knew I'd seen enough. I grabbed Molly and bolted, my heart pounding in my chest. As we ran, I heard the man's eerie laughter behind us, and then something heavy flew past me. It was the spade. I heard him yell, "Damn it!" and that only made me run faster. I knew the forest well, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I pushed through the dense brush and emerged from the trees, not stopping until I reached the garage, where my dad was tinkering with the tractor lights. Breathing heavily, I kept the encounter to myself. I was afraid my dad would be angry and might prevent me from walking Molly in the forest again. From that day forward, I never ventured into the forest alone. The memory of that man and the bone he carried haunted me, a chilling reminder of how unpredictable and dangerous the world could be. It was a crisp autumn weekend in 1985 when my daughter, full of youthful energy, begged me to take her hiking. We decided to visit an old forest I used to frequent when I was younger. The place had a long, unbroken trail that meandered along a canal and ended at a remote peninsula with a stunning view of the Bay of Miami. The only way in and out was the same path, so if you found yourself trapped at the end, your only escape was to jump into the water. Despite the risks, it was a perfect spot for a hike, so we set off from my car, eager for adventure. The entrance was situated next to a busy road, where cars zoomed by constantly. There had once been a row of Australian pine trees that offered some privacy, but the city had cut them down, deeming them non-native. Now, as we walked, anyone on the road could easily spot us from above, which was unsettling. We were an easy target, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we might be observed from the road. After about a half hour of walking, we reached the end of the trail, where the dense mangroves met the canal. We paused to enjoy the view, but my peace was short-lived. A large, burly man wearing a faded light blue shirt appeared in the distance. My heart skipped a beat as I watched him approach. He didn't seem like a typical hiker. His mannerisms were off, and there was something unsettling about his presence. My daughter, only 9, was excited and wanted to continue down the path to the peninsula. I told her we'd stay put for a moment while I watched the man closely. As he drew nearer, he began to act peculiarly, holding his arms out as if taking photographs of the sparse landscape. There were only dry rocks and withered grass, not much to photograph, which made his behavior even stranger. My daughter noticed too and said, "He's just taking pictures of nothing." Then I realized something alarming. He wasn't holding a camera at all. This was the first major warning sign. I tried to remain calm and continued watching him, refusing to turn my back. His behavior was increasingly erratic, and I suspected he might be hiding something. Suddenly, he seemed to lose interest and started to walk away, but I could still see him skulking behind the trees. His bright blue shirt was a stark contrast against the dark woods, making him stand out even more. Determined not to let him out of my sight, I decided to wait and observe his next move. He vanished from view for a few moments, and then I saw him reappear, moving slowly towards the trail's entrance. It was clear now. He had been waiting for the right moment to make a move, and his plans had not gone as he hoped. I decided it was time to leave. I didn't take the usual route back. Instead, I led my daughter down a less traveled path, which veered away from the main trail and led to a more overgrown, thorny area. I hoped this detour would keep us safe from any potential ambush. The overgrown path was rough, but it provided the cover we needed. As we neared the end of the detour, I saw his white truck parked near the entrance. My anxiety spiked, but by the time we reached the top of the hill, the truck was gone. We hurried back to my car, and once we were safely inside, I knew I needed to take precautions. That evening, my partner drove me to a nearby store where I purchased a can of pepper spray, a tool I hoped would offer some protection in the future. I had hiked through those woods countless times, always feeling secure, but this encounter had changed everything. I felt a shiver as I realized how close we had come to a potentially dangerous situation. From now on, I vowed never to venture into those woods without being prepared for any lurking threat. A few hours ago, an unsettling incident occurred that has left me restless tonight. I'm taking a short break from work in a remote part of the UK, where I've been indulging in my passion for photography. I discovered a scenic group of trees in a nearby forest and set up my camera and tripod just as the sun began to set, hoping to capture some beautiful twilight shots. While I was engrossed in adjusting my equipment, I noticed a woman walking near the entrance to the tree-lined path where I was set up. She had parked her car next to mine when I arrived. She passed by several times, glancing at me with an odd, lingering stare. Her repeated, prolonged gazes made me uneasy. I thought she might be interested in exploring the same path, but as soon as she saw I was taking pictures, she chose to walk away. Approximately 5 minutes later, she reappeared, this time limping oddly. She stopped a short distance away and stared at me with a disconcerting look before resuming her approach. My apprehension grew. I asked if she was all right, but my voice trembled. I began packing up my camera, preparing my tripod as a precautionary measure. It became increasingly apparent that this person, now seeming more like a man in disguise, was acting strangely. He grunted as he moved to the edge of the path and started scattering a pile of leaves. His erratic behavior intensified my concern. I called a friend, describing the situation and asking her to stay on the line for support. I continued taking a few more photos to maintain a semblance of calm, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. The forest grew eerily silent, and I convinced myself the noises I heard were just wildlife. After what felt like an eternity, I decided it was time to leave. Just then, I saw the man again, now dressed in typical men's clothing. His sinister grin as he approached me sent a shiver down my spine. I was still on the phone with my friend, gripping my tripod tightly. I rushed to my car and locked the doors. As I started the engine, I saw him move deliberately toward my vehicle. My heart raced as I sped away from the forest. Once I felt safe, I went straight to the police station to report the incident. However, the officers were skeptical and thought I might be overreacting. They didn't see any immediate threat, which left me feeling uneasy. This experience has made me more vigilant about my surroundings. I've come to realize that sometimes our instincts about danger are worth heeding, even when others don't see the same risks.